Hey y'all, AKC here, and today I'm back with another review, and today I'm going to be reviewing To Pimp Butterfly by Kendrick Lamar. Now, I get with the other two reviews, I'm not going to explain who Kendrick Lamar is. I'm just going to explain what was happening around the time when this came out. So before this, 3 years before this came out in 2015, he released, of course, Good Kid, Mad City, critically acclaimed, everybody loved it, even got nominated for a Grammy like in 2013, but it actually lost to Macklemore out of all things. I know it's very weird, and then after that, Macklemore like said some stuff about hey, you should have deserved it or something like that. It was really weird. Anyways, obviously, Kendrick Lamar was going through a lot of stuff in those 3 years after Good Kid, Mad City released. And here is the result of that. Freaking this album, this is obviously critically acclaimed. You've probably already heard about it before. Very good hip hop album, and it touches on so many different themes. Now I'm gonna not try to make this as long as my other review of Good Kid, Mad City, but I'll try to short it down a little bit. So first of all, the way I'm gonna do that is summarize just the whole album, what it's about right now. So this album kind of shows the journey and hurt that Kendrick Lamar faces throughout throughout basically the 3 years from him doing this album. Finishing Good Kid, Mad City and working on this album. Fear, we have depression, politics. What do you think about depression, politics, himself, fame? Just so many different topics wrapped up in this little bag of eclectic jazz, rap, soul, funkish type of influence songs. So first, let's start about some of the songs that he does really well with some of these albums. For example, Depression. He has songs like You, All Right, and all these talking about his mental state. In You, you know how in You he's very, of course, drunk. He does not like himself in this song. Granted, he could be talking about all different types of people, but he's obviously talking about himself and about how like he thinks that he's not reaching enough people, how he thinks that fame has kind of overtaken him, and he kind of just hates himself for it. Then we have songs like All Right, which kind of directly contrasts that. He's telling himself that it's going to be all right. I feel this way, but it's going to be all right. And I kind of just wraps up that whole little subplot within this multiple subplots of him finally accepting himself and accepting almost like the world, but not totally. It's kind of him mostly accepting himself and accepting to love himself. Then we also have other songs that have to do with fame, like I said, like with songs like Wesley's Theory, Wesley's Theory, Institutionalized, These Walls. Basically, almost the whole first 5 songs of the album have to do somewhat with fame or money. For example, Wesley's Theory, kind of just talking about the concept of having a lot of money and wanting to do with that money. For example, Uncle Sam, obviously representing America, like, hey, I can take you to the mall, I can have you get the mall, you can buy the mall and everything. Basically saying that he can get big, I can have you get big and everything. Uncle Sam being, again, America tempting Kendrick Lamar. You also have other songs like King Kunta, kind of like a braggadocious type of song that, first of all, has a lot of G-Funk, kind of P-Funk influence. It's a very bouncy type of song. But also, it kind of like, again, it's kind of like a resonator. It kind of brings kind of like almost Lamar back to a certain point, which is, Compton and him. And brings him down from the fame because Wesley's Theory is a very grand type of opener. But for free but King Kunta is a little bit more like simplistic. It's a direct contrast with Wesley's Theory. Then we go to Institutionalized, and this is a very interesting track. Like it takes a couple of listens to get and like actually dissect this song for what it is. So Institutionalized is actually about Kendrick Lamar going to this award show, going to this some type of show when there's all these famous people around, and he brings somebody from his hood, and he kind of speaks from a perspective of not only himself and about how he did that and how he's like, that was not really a good idea because they would just be acting different and everything, but also the person that he brought saying that like he's he's like he's just drawing my temptation. There's so many people to rob and everything, and it's just a very interesting song. Snoop Dogg is a very good performance on here. He kind of almost perfectly fits with this type of whimsical type of beat. You know what I mean? And then we have freaking Bilal kind of imitating his grandma, basically saying like, "Hey, nothing will change until you actually get up and actually try to change it and everything." So this kind of touches on multiple topics at once. We also have For Free, which is a cool little interlude track, which kind of again references some of the themes that's gonna happen throughout the album before they even really happen. For Free talks about, basically how America is basically taking advantage of black people, not really giving them the credit they deserve, even though basically black people kind of built it from the ground up, because slavery and everything. It almost directly relates to songs like I feel like this kind of contrasts with songs like, The Blacker the Berry, or maybe The Blacker the Berry, or like Hood Politics, or Moral Man. Especially Moral Man when you think about it, because Moral Man literally talks about multiple black leaders that people have looked up to, but when something has happened, everybody's like, okay, never mind, hit the van. But I'm gonna get to that later. These Walls, like I said, is another good example of showing fame and how can it affect and poison your mind. And the fact that this is kind of like a sequel to Sing About Me. You know how the dude at the end of Sing About Me died from a shootout? Well, in this song, Kendrick Lamar is actually sleeps with the dude who killed one of his, friends. And he's basically doing that in retaliation. He's using his fame as an advantage to, basically get back at people, which is one of the bad things about, being famous. That's what he's trying to point out. Then we have other more down to earth songs, I would say, in terms that he tries to go back home and he tries to recuperate himself in his mental state with songs like For Sale and Mama. But then he kind of realizes that even back then, even back at his hometown, there's still problems. Like when songs like Hood Politics, kind of talking exactly about that, about gangs and all the gangs, drugs, and all this stuff that's affecting other, the black people in his neighborhood, like that, even then. On that topic, I would say that For Sale and Mama I don't really like them as much, considering I just don't like how much it slows down the album. Because before this, the album is actually very well paced, very, very well paced. By the time you're alright, you're like, oh shoot, we're already on the seventh song. I had no clue because it goes by so fast. But then For Sale, it's supposed to slow it down, but it kind of slows it down too much, and Mama doesn't really help because it kind of sits you into that state. They're not bad songs, but I just wish maybe they didn't slow down the album as much. Again, I feel like they talk about their topics very well and in very interesting ways. I just don't like them as much. Then we go to How Much a Dollar Cost. Definitely a very interesting song, considering that this is kind of plopped right there in song list. And it's kind of hard to see, okay, how does this really relate to anything else that's happened? Because it talks about Kendrick Lamar having an encounter with, a poor man, and the poor man is singing about money, and Kendrick Lamar is like, no, and it's this whole debacle between them, and then the poor man basically ends up winning the argument. I'm going to assume Kendrick Lamar ends up giving him the money, and the poor man's like, hey, I'm God, basically. Freaking, Kendrick Lamar kind of had a spiritual realization. Basically, he's kind of got humbled down, and it's translated in this very beautiful type of way, where it's this really progressively dynamic type of song, where it's constantly changing. We also have vocals from James Fultonary, and Ronald Isley at the end. Very, very good performances. Then we go to Complexion. Very underrated song in my opinion. Kind of just talking about not only the complexion of skin color, skin tones, melatonin or whatever. But to me, I would say even black and white people, but mostly about dark-skinned and light-skinned people. Because, even though this is not really talked about, like in this is really, I don't know if this is known in other races, but in terms of like black people, like our skin tone is very determinant on whether we, I feel like whether we, how we treat each other differently. Now, of course, not everybody, but it's definitely like an undertone. Like usually, like the lighter they are, the more they're seen differently. The darker they are, they're seen differently. It's very crazy, and this kind of perfectly exemplifies why I think that all that stuff is stupid, because we're all black. We're all the same at the end of the day. And it even delves deeper into like, gangs and everything. Like, all these colors and this complexion don't mean a thing. We're all together. We're all, it's just a really uplifting song in my opinion. I think it's a very underrated song, and Rapsody does a very fine job. Then we go to a direct contrast with that. While Complexion is very smooth, it's mellow, it brings you to a certain mood, kind of like a very how do you say it? My gosh, wait, a very intimate type of mood. The Black of the Berry's intimate, like Complexion, but it's not smooth. It is in your face, but not in the way you want it to. It's like punching you in the face, because it's very mad. It's very mad about how not only white people treat black people, cops treat black people, but mostly about how black people treat black people. It's called The Blacker the Berry, the bigger I shoot. The blacker the berry, the bigger I shoot. The blacker the berry, the bigger I shoot. The blacker the berry. Yeah, basically, you know what I'm saying. The blacker a black person is, the more people are on edge and everything. And that's what the whole song is saying. And man, he does such a good job. You can tell that he's very much angry, and the beat very much helps. It very much helps. You can feel his anger. But then again, we have a lot of compare and contrast things here. Like, these does a really good job with this album, and not in terms in like themes, but also in terms of sound. He might go to a very psychedelic track, to a very, funky track. You might go to a very jazzy track, to a very psychedelic track. It's a very contrasting type of album, and I love it. And then we go, like I said, contrast again to You Ain't Gotta Lie. Basically, these last four songs are kind of the conclusion. This is the conclusion of the album, and he does it very well. You Ain't Gotta Lie being another underrated track, where it's basically his mom saying that, hey, be yourself. You ain't gotta lie to anybody. Just be yourself. That's basically what she's saying. And it's a very uplifting track. I love it. I feel like there's not as much to say about it, because it's not as deep as any of the other ones, but it still has got merit, and I still think it's pretty freaking underrated. Then we have I, which is kind of like a live performance song, and it talks about Kendrick Lamar finding out to love himself and everything. I love the like the radio version of the song. A lot of people don't for some reason, but I think it's just really uplifting. But in this one, it's in the live version. It's the album version. We have this very lush type of performance, like it's at a concert and everything. But then it kind of interrupts in the middle, because the crowd is being disruptive, and Kendrick Lamar's like, no, we don't got time to be doing this. We have way too little life to live to be doing this. Like, there's so many people dying. Like, come on, we have to enjoy what the heck we have while it's here. And he basically just goes into like all that, and he basically just does like a random freestyle talking about the word, nigga. Where he goes like NEGUS, and you know what that means? That means royalty. That means this. That means that. Basically, he's trying to uplift the black people in his community, and it's just very beautiful. I really love this song. I really, really love the song. I love everything about it. I love the quality of it. I love how natural it feels. It feels like actually very natural, and I just really love it. Then we go to Mortal Man, and this is basically the climax. The whole story wrapped up into one 12-minute song. And I didn't talk about this, but throughout the album, you have these little like poetry parts where you see Kendrick Lamar starting a poem and then ending it, and then continuing a little bit more of the poem and then ending it, and you were wondering like, okay, what is that about? And it's actually a poem to Tupac. Yeah, it's actually a poem to Tupac, and they have a conversation about how black people act, how specifically black men act, about how, hey, when you're a teenager, it's good to get that stuff up. It's good to, work out while you can. It's good to basically find yourself and get stronger, because by the time you get older, they're gonna try to whittle you down the older you get. And I feel like this is a very interesting conversation. Oh yeah, also the before the interview, Mortal Man, is also just a great song. Kind of just again talking about, how I talked about earlier about how when the stuff hits the fan, are you still a fan and everything. It's a very, very climactic song, and I think it does its job really well. Other aspects of the album I like, since I kind of talked about everything about the album, story wise, album cover iconic, very good, very much fits the music. Sounds, oh my goodness, so many different sounds. It's so lush, it's so psychedelic. There's so many different influences on here. Like, I'm surprised that he made all this, he could put all this on here and it all sounds cohesive as it does. Like, it's kind of very, I would say it's kind of very hard to say that this is one of the best hip-hop albums of all time. I don't know if this is the best hip-hop album of all time, but I always think people overrate it. But then when you hear it, when you think about it, you really think, oh my gosh, okay, there's no way you can't see it. It's so grandiose. It talks about so many different topics without being offensive to either one of them. He gives enough topics, enough time, and then goes away from them well enough for you wanting more from the topic and getting more. It's a very balanced album. So yeah, you already know, 10 out of 10, highly recommend. Hex, yeah. Do I think it's the best hip hop album of all time? I don't know. I haven't listened to that much hip hop yet. Do I think it's the best hip hop album I've ever listened to personally? Maybe. Actually, I would say maybe. Still think it's a bad competition, but yeah, 10 out of 10. You should definitely give it a listen.